Welcome to the STR Data Lab.
Hello and welcome to the STR Data Lab. I'm Jamie Lane, Chief Economist at AirDNA, and I'm joined today by a really exciting guest. I've got Brandy Canaley, the COO of Roami, and fellow GMH podcast host. Brandy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. I'm in your domain now.
Yeah, usually it's you peppering me with questions on what we're seeing in the data, and now I get to sort of pepper you with questions on a topic that I think you are and probably one of the experts on, just given the markets you guys operate, and all the events come through. So we're gonna dive into major events, like the Super Bowl, pricing, operations, like just all the extra work and sort of challenge and sort of benefit that goes into operating in a market with lots of events.
Yeah, I am living this right now with Super Bowl a couple days away. So this is very fresh.
Yeah, so maybe we do have an episode, that my former co-host had done with you probably 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We're now on episode 119, if you can believe it.
Oh.
But maybe it's just start with, and what is Roami and what is your role there?
Yeah, so I'm the COO of Roami. We are an urban, short-term rental operator. We focus mainly on full building multifamily, but we will take a penthouse every now and then. We love a penthouse. And yeah, so we're really concentrated. We have about 800 units across those two markets. So lots of density. And they're both, I call them the woo markets, like woo, like, leisure markets with high ADR where all the big groups like to go.
I feel like there was the Woo Girls, like, from How I Met Your Mother, like, yeah.
Yes, it's exactly where I got that from.
I love that. So 800 units across South Florida and New Orleans. In South Florida, like, I feel like there's always something going on down there. I've actually stayed at a Romy unit down there. It was excellent. And then New Orleans, like, you've got Super Bowl coming up, you've got Mardi Gras every year, you got Jazz Fest, you got Halloween, like all these sort of big events that draw people in and the sort of high ADRs that go along with it. So can we just start with, like, as you guys are planning out sort of the calendar throughout the year and sort of thinking through staffing, thinking through operations, like how do event days sort of differ and how you think about running the business than non-event days?
Yeah, so especially with something like Super Bowl or Taylor Swift, where the market is basically sold out, it's really, really difficult. So like from an operations perspective, it's really the primary thing is making sure that all the units are cleaned on time. And and other days where you might have the like luxury of, okay, we can just like push this unit or like the clean can go past 4 p.m. and that's fine. Like you don't have that leisure, like that luxury. There's so many back-to-backs. There's so many people coming in before the Super Bowl, and then there's a couple of conferences after the Super Bowl. So there's just literally no breathing room. And that happened at Taylor Swift as well. And so you are not also the only operator that is, experiencing high volume. Everyone in the city is doing that as well. So getting the extra help, extra housekeepers, housemen, maintenance, whatever you might need on like like a contract level is also really difficult to get. So it's making sure that no one has taken time off during these weekends. That's a big one. We had one year a couple years ago where someone approved like two people to take off during Mardi Gras, and I was like, absolutely not. Like that's just like you can't go. So it's really about like planning with your current team and making sure that everybody knows the expectation, like you can't take off during this time. Making sure we have a plan for getting the rooms clean and up to guest standards. And then if we do think we're going to need extra help, making sure we're starting those conversations with our contracting agencies like well in advance, because it would be silly if we're like, oh, today's Wednesday and I need like 4 more housekeepers on Friday. Like that's just not going to happen.
So when you think about events like the Super Bowl are sort of announced well in advance, right? And Mardi Gras, the weekend And you can look out into the calendar and know every weekend that's going forward. So how do you guys think about opening up those units for booking and like how you sort of start pricing those units? Like, because I assume like even events like the Super Bowl, most of the bookings are going to happen in like the last, was it 2 months before that event? But a good amount of people are going to book a year or even more before that event. And you want to make sure, and maybe since you guys are or tell me how it works with your sort of owners in your buildings. Like I assume a lot of your buildings are in leases, maybe some sort of rev share, but like you guys are thinking maybe more about total revenue and that you get out an event and not like maximizing the revenue for every unit. So maybe just talk about like how you think about sort of filling in and sort of pricing all the units you have in the market.
Yeah, so we actually now are like I would say like 90% management agreement. So
Okay.
we are the arbitrage days are over. Um but to your point, so like the booking windows are crazy because the Super Bowl, for example, last year, Booking.com had a huge campaign during the Super Bowl about booking. And then the next day, we saw huge bookings from Booking.com. So we had to make sure that that pricing was right then. But then it kind of peters off, right? Because you have to wait till the season starts and people aren't really booking like that. And so there is this kind of question at one point, like, okay, do we hold out for like crazy rates in the final 30 days before the event? Or do we make sure that we have like a steady booking that's going to cover the costs of the operations? Even if we don't have lease liabilities, there's obviously the cost of running the business. And I was thinking about how when this was in Phoenix and the Super Bowl was in Phoenix, people probably thought that they were going to get these like really juicy ADRs. And so they held out, they held out, they held out, and then they didn't get them in a lot of cases. And so there is no like crystal ball about it. New Orleans, we're seeing like fantastic ADRs, but that really has been coming in the last, 30 days, even, in the last 2 weeks. So that is a bit of a struggle of like, okay, let's like kind of release some more available. I mean, we have all the availability, but like let's kind of keep our pricing. You have to keep an eye on the pricing and an eye on the pacing. And it really is kind of like a gamble at the end of like how much you want to leave open at really high prices to see if they'll book. It is very difficult to know. You don't want to come out and not have booked half your portfolio because you were hoping for some outrageous rates.
Yeah, and it was interesting. We were looking into the data around comparing New Orleans to like Phoenix. In Phoenix, it definitely sort of played out that way of like people had their rates really high from the beginning. Then what you saw in Phoenix was a huge increase in available supply of because I think a lot of people maybe differentiating Phoenix from Miami or from New Orleans. A lot of people have second homes in sort of the Scottsdale, Phoenix area. They're like, oh, I can make a whole lot of money by renting out my second home. So we saw a massive increase in supply. Demand didn't really meet that supply. So you have a whole lot of people that had unrented nights that were probably pretty disappointed. And there was this thought because, and you sort of had this PGA Tour event sort of aligning with the Super Bowl that was just going to be this amazing event. And now we look at New Orleans, a market that's pretty used to holding major events. And we've essentially seen almost no new supply in the run up to the Super Bowl. So essentially, the people that are renting out, and you aren't seeing like this big run up of new supply. And I was going to ask you one, why do you think that is? And then two, like, is regulation the answer?
Yeah, regulation is the answer. There and I'm even surprised that some people aren't like just like, "Oh, I'm gonna cheekily just do it for this weekend and like, screw it. If they find me, they find me. They can't possibly find us all." Um, but you have seen like a huge crackdown in on short-term rentals in New Orleans, and they're going to start enforcing things after Mardi Gras. And it's like, okay, like get all that tourist tax dollars and then we'll start enforcing this.
Yeah.
And, New Orleans just is like, it's not a city that's known for being super organized. The STR like languaging is very it's been very all over the place, and the enforcement of that has also been all over the place. But they've really started to crack down recently, especially in the French Quarter, and so that is probably a lot of it. If people, anecdotally, I've heard from some people that they're trying to like sell and get out now that they can't rent short term because some people, interestingly enough, like they do have their second homes in New Orleans. It's especially people who have things in the Garden District or the Quarter, and if they can't make money when they're not there, I think that it becomes less attractive. And this is one of the reasons why I think if you're an operator that has all of their ducks in a row, that good regulation is good because you don't have this runaway supply growth. You can actually capitalize and benefit from these demand events. Whereas like, in Phoenix, everybody just threw things up. So I I have my comments on how New Orleans is doing it, but this has just been an example of how you can actually benefit if there's something in place.
So what are you guys seeing in terms of rate increase? And overall, we're seeing in the market like an increase of around 67% year over year. And that's like not necessarily taking the same weekend because it sort of aligns up with Mardi Gras, but just off of sort of a typical weekend, which seems like a pretty big an increase. How are you guys playing out?
Yeah, so interestingly, for this time last year, this was the weekend before Mardi Gras. So it's not it wasn't like a dead weekend. So last year, and I always like to add this caveat, like our portfolio size is all over the place. There's a studio with no kitchen, and then there's a 6 bedroom. So this is it's a big range. But last year, or for this Mardi Gras weekend, we were getting an ADR of 730, 760, and this year it's 1300, 1400. So pretty significant increase. And that, last year it was the big days were obviously Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then this year the big days are Thursday through Monday. So it's just a bigger chunk of time. And it's a different clientele also, right? The people who come from Mardi Gras, obviously there's people who have money that are coming to drop it, but Super Bowl money is different.
Yeah. And I assume with the sort of big events and comes the higher rates and like there also comes like higher expectations, right? Like are you able to like meet guest expectations so still value for these stays during these big events? Or is it just like, you're getting a great spot in a high demand night, like, and you're gonna take what we get?
I would say it's in the middle of those. We are not doing luxury homes. This is not the Four Seasons, right? There's already an established level of service. Our number one priority is like all of the rooms are in good condition, clean, ready for the guests to arrive, and it's on time. And so what's difficult in this is like also the type of clientele. Everyone wants people who comped early check-ins or comped late checkouts or just want to be able to pay for them. And you can't offer that. Like it's wall to wall back to backs on either side. And so it's kind of like kind of managing these expectations with people who have high expectations of like, no, checkout is at 11 and you have to leave at 11 because there's someone coming in right behind you. And so it is about managing those expectations. And we're also sending out communication to people. Like, if you really want to like secure another day, you just need to buy another day. Like, if it's a regular weekend, we'll do like late checkout brackets and stuff like that. But now it's like, you just need to book the other day if it's even available because of just kind of the strain that an event like this puts on the ops team.
Yeah. Is there anything that you've seen or you guys have done that like is able to like make an event like stay like great? Like, I don't know, like anything like during the Swift concerts or upcoming for the Super Bowl that just like, and you're able to do a little bit extra that sort of goes above and beyond what you guys would do during a normal weekend?
Yeah, so we so in New Orleans, if you can drink everywhere. So they have little go cups. And so we had custom ones with like our Romeo, who's our Fox mascot, like partying with Taylor Swift. And we have some for the Super Bowl, like, some fun design for them. So we're passing those out to people if we see them like walking out the door. One of our buildings has a bar in it that we sometimes like we open it and close it depending on the event. So we'll have like happy hours and things like that throughout the weekend for tenant or not tenants. That's very cold for guests that are staying, guests that are staying there. And it's because also of the limited staff availability, you can't go too much beyond that. So it's these like little touches and also making sure that we have people stationed around all of the buildings so that they can, have someone to talk to, that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, the go cups and then open bar occasionally are our contributions to the weekend.
That's awesome. With these big events, like, and is there something different you guys do with your listings, like on Airbnb, Vrbo, Booking, to make them stand out for these and the because I assume like and you want and there's competition to get the highest rates during these times, and you want to get booked and at the expense of the others in the market. You've got a lot of listings. So imagine you guys have tested a lot of different strategies. Is there anything you can share that like helps get you booked as opposed to other people during these events?
Well, this is one of those situations where location is key. So in New Orleans, all of our properties are, for the most part, in the central business and warehouse district, and you can walk to the Superdome from all of those locations. So that in all of the listing titles, where on the OTAs that allow you to custom write your own listing titles, it'll say like in the title, like 5 minutes to Superdome, 15-minute walk to the Superdome, that kind of thing. And then especially like around Taylor Swift or any other big concert or big event happening there, that is really key. And conversely, it's like, oh, that distance from the French Quarter and, that kind of thing. We don't do anything in terms of like changing up the photos or anything like that. Maybe you can. I mean, anytime you make little adjustments in your listing, sometimes it kind of gives you that little jolt in the algorithm. So if you have that time and bandwidth, that's also something worth looking into. But I think making sure that in your listing, it says multiple times how close you are to the location that is like important is super helpful, because that's really people are just going to the map and they're like, okay, I see on Google Maps this is where the Superdome is, so I'm just gonna like zoom in there.
So, and now that you've done a bunch of these events, like I assume you guys have like a playbook or some sort of an operating efficiencies that you sort of learned, like having done a few of these. So, when you're, let's say, a host is in New Orleans getting ready to host their sort of first big event, like what are the things they should be thinking about that may be different this weekend than a typical sort of weekend that you're hosting? And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'll take it like I won't come at it from a larger operator perspective. If you have like your one home that you're doing or one apartment, I would, and normally, let's say like your linens that you're normally like you might wash them while you're cleaning the house. For this event, buy at least one more par of all your linens. So that way you can just get in, change everything, and deal with the linen later, maybe do it at another location. And having that kind of like prep work done in advance is going to save you. I think linen is a huge headache for everyone, and really dialing in on when guests are going to arrive, because someone might have booked their stay, check-ins at 4, but they're actually not landing until 11 p.m. That gives you the extra time to, make sure if there's any maintenance things you need to fix. I would also try running all of your appliances beforehand if you have that time. Obviously, the bigger you get, the less you can do of those things. But I would say definitely have all of your linens, consumables, like instead of dealing with those things in the unit, just come in and have a whole other set ready, and that will save you a lot of time. And then if you are a smaller host and you can do some sort of nice amenity. If you're in New Orleans and you can get like a king cake or beignets or a little thing of coffee or whatever and leave that, that'll make a huge difference. When we were smaller, we were able to do things like leave champagne, but we have like thousands of turns this weekend. So that's not happening. Or hundreds of turns rather. So it's just still it's a much different game. If you're a smaller host, you can provide much more of that like personalized touch. If you know the locations like that are popping off this weekend as opposed to others, or little tips like if you find a driver, maybe just see what his cost is for the day instead of Ubering repeatedly. So yeah, I think those are my keeping it simple is really key. Do yourself a favor and keep things as streamlined and simple as possible.
Cool. And then let's say a host maybe started the rates really high. They're sitting here now. We're recording on Wednesday. You said people are going to start arriving tomorrow. Like, given how you've seen events book up in New Orleans, are people sort of out of luck now if they haven't already sold their unit?
Um, I wouldn't say anything's impossible. You're going to have cancellations, like someone's AC goes down and they can't host them or, whatever it is. So there's always going to be people booking last minute for whatever reason. I know some people that got Super Bowl tickets like yesterday and are like, "Do you have anything?" Like, no. One of them was a family member and he was like, "I'm sorry, you can't pull the family card this time." And so I would say you might try like this is just kind of like what's your pain level, because you could hold out and something happens on Thursday and you get that super chunky booking. Or like if you really are just like, I just need someone in here, it's time to incrementally come down. Like don't just like slash the rates, like take them down a couple like 5%, 10%, see what that does every couple hours. I think that's the key though. Instead of waiting days or a day, you like every couple hours see how things are going, because you're kind of coming down to like crunch time.
Yeah, it's funny. And family asking during major times, like I'm doing a ski trip with my dad and brother coming up to Steamboat. My dad calls and he's like, "Hey, people with short-term rentals, can you call and get us a good deal?" And like,
Oh, during high season?
yeah, during high season, like, no, like you just don't ask during those times. Like, if we want to go out in April or May, like, and try to get a deal, like, absolutely. But like on a
Yeah,
weekend during high season, like, I don't think we're asking for that.
I know. I that always blows my mind sometimes, even not on like the family side of things, but we get like so many influencers that are like, "Oh, I'm coming to Miami for like this 1 week during March. Do you want to collaborate?" I'm like, "Oh, you're coming during Miami Music Week? Oh, that's a big old no thanks. You can come in August
We'd
for all the
love to
exposure."
collaborate. Yeah, in
Yeah,
August.
I'd love to collaborate in August.
So now we've sort of gotten through the event,
Mhm.
and now you've got, I'm assuming, a lot of people that have been partying in New Orleans or Miami, and you've got to turn over all these units and prepare for and all these guests coming in. What can people expect coming out of these events? Is it that, oh, people are at the Super Bowl, they're at the Taylor Swift concert, so they're not going to be in the unit, like they're going to come back pristine?
No, expect all your units to be trashed, and then if they're not, then that is a pleasant surprise. But they are absolutely partying in the unit before they go to the pre-party, like, especially, I mean, if you're in a big party market, like, the party starts at home
Mhm.
and then proceeds to wherever the event is. And so you should just come in with the mindset of like, this is probably going to be really bad. And then if it's not, that's amazing. And you budget for a longer clean. And then also, people, this is why we really push like, if you want to be in the unit at 11:01, book another day on these big demand weekends, because we are coming at 11 and you're going to have to get out. And that's where like the guest experience, you don't want them to have a bad time at the end of their trip and have that be like the sour impression that they have, but you also have to like turn the whole building. And did they trash the room? How much longer is that going to take? All of that kind of stuff. So I would say setting even before checkout, 24 hours before checkout, sending that text message, email, whatever it is. Do you want a late checkout? Like, you have to confirm now, reminding them of the time that checkout is, because If you think that the party is stopping when the game ends, like, you are sorely mistaken. The party is just starting, because those who are excited are going out to celebrate, and those who are sad are going to drown their sorrows. And, you know, so just anticipate and also a lot of hungover adults. I think we all know that the hangover recovery as you get older is it's not getting better. So
Yeah.
but then again, in this, like, having a plan, if you're a smaller host, it's a little bit easier, like, just get in and start attacking, making sure you get your linens changed out, start the dishwasher, like, all of that kind of stuff. If you're a bigger operator and you have, like, a bigger team, having, like, at least a houseman or one dedicated housekeeper that's just going through and, like, stripping everything and starting all the dishwashers, and kind of, like, tackling it like that, so that the other housekeepers can get in and, do the rest of the cleans. But that's what we'll do. Like, the houseman will just go in and start all of those things, and then kind of see where people need help throughout the market. But yeah, and just, I think this is where maintaining calm in, like, really stressful situations, like, these are laborious jobs. Like, it's super demanding on you physically to get all these units ready, and there's a lot of things going on. So just, like, taking a second, if you feel yourself getting overwhelmed, to just, like, breathe, like, do some breathing exercises. I'm very serious for, like, 30 seconds, and just be like, at the end of the day, this is just vacation. It's gonna be fine, you know, and move forward. But it's when you get caught up in the chaos that things get kinda nuts.
Yep. We're hosting people on their vacation. We're not doing their brain surgery. Like,
Exactly. Like, they'll survive, and honestly, a lot of people go through all the stages of, like, grief when something happens, even if it's small. So they're gonna be angry, or denials first, right? Then anger, and then, like, they'll finally make their way to acceptance. And also, like, when you have these big events, there's people that come in with a really high sense of entitlement, because they're expensive events. People, to in their defense, are spending a lot of money, but they're also just people. So make sure that, like, you kind of, if someone is being aggressive with you or something, like, you have to, like, that does not give them the right to treat you and your staff however they feel like treating you, you know?
yeah. So, and we talked about the Super Bowl. Maybe a month later, you've got Mardi Gras. So, how's Mardi Gras shaping up for you guys?
Mardi Gras is looking good. It's weird this year because it's so late, that, usually we have it in February, and the whole month is pretty good, but it's pacing slower this year than it was last year. So, and it's just, this is kind of the interesting thing with an event that moves. It's kind of hard to compare apples to apples every year. So Mardi Gras is in the beginning of the month this year. Yeah, and it's pacing a bit slower. Like, we're at about, 60, 55, 60% occupancy. Even, and Mardi Gras books up. People will book that. People are already trying to book for next year. So the diehards are already in there. But the ADRs are not quite as sweet as Super Bowl, but still pretty good.
Yeah. So, and thinking about all the events across your markets, like in Miami, and you've got what, Ultra, you've got Miami Music Week, you've got New Orleans, you have Mardi Gras, Jazz Fest, Halloween. Like, what's your favorite event in terms of well-behaved guests and decent units when you get back? Like, not a lot of complaints. And what's the worst event for you guys?
Oh, well, TBD on Super Bowl. So I have to say that Jazz Fest is actually usually good guests. A lot of it is, I mean, there's obviously a younger crowd, but it tends to be an older crowd. And that could be, like, later 30s and up, but it's not like the raucous crowd that you get, like, for Ultra and Miami Music Week, which draws, like, Miami Music Week draws the full spectrum of ages, but there's definitely, like, a destructive cohort of, like, college students and people in their early 20s.
Yeah.
And I mean, the stamina, incredible. People really, they can really go hard for a long time. um, I think that that's, yeah, I would say year over year, the the spring break-ish, the college spring breakers that are coming for Miami Music Week are probably the most destructive.
Yeah. Well, Brandy, I feel like you've had a lot of knowledge to sort of impart on our listeners on operating during events. Is there any sort of last words of advice? And if people want to find more about Roami, find more about you, and where can they do that?
Yeah, so I think my last piece of advice is plan like a happy hour or something for your team afterwards to like let everybody decompress and celebrate, or dinner, brunch, whatever, just some sort of event to like really give your team like the kudos that they deserve, and maybe like spot bonuses if that's something that you guys do. And then if you want to find more about us, if you're looking to book a short-term rental in Miami or New Orleans, you can find us at roami.com. And then every Monday morning, I'm on GMH with Will Slickers, Michael Golden, and once a month, Jamie Lane, just shouting into the void our opinions about the short-term rental industry.
Well, Brandy, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks for letting me interview you today, and I'll see you on Monday.
All right, sounds good.